I will never forget the day someone laughed at the very thing that had kept people alive. My name is Laura Mitchell. I am 39 years old, born and raised in a small town in Ohio, and for the last 15 years I have been the quiet backbone of Norhollow Manufacturing. I am not an executive or a manager with a fancy title. I am the person who makes sure the floor runs without accidents, breakdowns, or chaos. My job is not glamorous, but when you are responsible for machines the size of small houses, and for people who work inches from moving steel, you either care about every detail or you bury your head in the sand. I never had the luxury of doing the latter. Every day, my work began with the same ritual: my laminated, color-coded inspection sheet. It was my design, my system, my shield against disaster. It told me exactly which pressure gauges to check, which belts to examine, which circuit boxes to open. Every shift supervisor signed it before passing it to me, and nothing, absolutely nothing, was marked complete until I had seen it with my own eyes. That sheet was more than paper. It was a promise. People teased me for it. They called it my paper Bible or my Stone Age tablet. A few of the younger guys joked that I guarded it like gold. In truth, they were not wrong. I did guard it like gold because I knew what it meant when a safety check was skipped. I had seen what happened in other plants: fires, equipment seizures, people losing fingers or worse. My checklist was my insurance policy against that, and it had a perfect record. 15 years without a single safety incident on my watch. In a place where one wrong move could cost someone their livelihood. Or their life. That was not luck. That was discipline. But discipline is not flashy, and it does not make for exciting company newsletters. The executives wanted speed, innovation, and things they could talk about on investor calls. My laminated sheet was the opposite of exciting. It was quiet, methodical, unchanging. And for some people, especially those who like to make big entrances with big ideas, that made it a target. I could sense it in the way new hires would glance at my clipboard, smirk, and then look at each other like I was some relic from another era. I did not take offense at first. Let them smirk. Let them think it was overkill. My satisfaction came from watching the floor run like a machine inside a machine. Precise, smooth, and safe. Still, I would be lying if I said the ridicule did not sting, even just a little. I had given this company nearly 2 decades of my life. I had missed family events to cover emergency inspections, come in at 4 a.m. to troubleshoot coolant issues, and stayed until midnight when a power surge fried half the plant's conveyor sensors. I had done all of that without ever asking for credit. So when people snickered about my antique methods, a part of me burned with quiet resentment. They did not understand that my system was built from thousands of small lessons learned the hard way. Every box on that sheet represented a time something had almost gone wrong, and my eyes had caught it before it did. I suppose some people are addicted to fixing problems in flashy, last-minute ways. They like the rush, the drama, the moment where they swoop in and save the day. I am the opposite. I would rather prevent the fire than fight it. That mindset is not romantic, but it is the reason my team never had to call the fire department in the first place. Over the years, I had seen managers come and go, each with their own ideas about efficiency. Some tried digital checklists. Some tried delegating inspections entirely to shift leads. But every single time, we came back to my laminated sheet, because it never failed. I knew one day, someone would challenge it again. I just did not know how hard they would try to destroy it, or how satisfying it would be to watch them fail. Looking back, I think that sheet represented more than just a tool. It was proof that quiet competence could outlast noise and ego. But at the time, I did not frame it that way. I just knew it worked. That was enough for me. I had my rhythm, my pride, and my spotless record. And even though part of me suspected my old-fashioned ways would one day collide with someone's idea of progress, I had no intention of changing a thing. In my mind, the results spoke for themselves. What I did not realize was that soon, someone would try to silence those results completely. And they would do it in the most insulting way possible. And that would be the beginning of their undoing. I remember the first time I saw him. Evan Brooks, 34 years old, walked onto the factory floor like he had been sent to rescue us from the dark ages. Slim suit, spotless white sneakers, expensive watch catching the light. He moved with the kind of confidence that only comes from never having had to clean grease off your hands. I knew right away he was not from a manufacturing background. His resume had been circulated in an internal email. Tech startups, consulting firms, some trendy logistics company on the West Coast. Not a single day of real plant work. Still, the executives were excited about him. They said he was here to modernize Norhollow Manufacturing and bring in new energy. That new energy showed itself fast. On his second day, Evan gathered the floor leads in the break room for what he called a vision session. I stood in the back with my clipboard, ready to take notes. He started by pacing in front of us, hands gesturing like he was on a stage. "We are going to leave behind these outdated systems," he said, glancing right at me with a half smile. "This is a new era. We are moving everything digital. Apps, cloud-based reporting, real-time alerts. The days of paper checklists are over." A few people chuckled. I did not. I just stared back, because I knew exactly where this was going. By the end of the week, it was official. My laminated inspection sheet. 15 years of refinement, precision, and 0 safety incidents was tossed aside. Literally. I walked into the break room one afternoon and saw it in the trash, folded in half, coffee stains blooming across the top. Evan was leaning over the counter, showing one of the leads a sleek-looking app on his tablet. "This," he said, "is going to make us faster, smarter, and more accountable." I asked him where the paper records would be kept as a backup. He smiled like I had just asked when we planned to install a fax machine. "Laura, we will not need backups. This is the future." I wanted to tell him the future does not mean much when the Wi-Fi drops in the middle of a shift or when the server hiccups during peak production hours. I wanted to explain that not everyone on the floor was comfortable with technology and that rushing them into a system they did not trust was asking for trouble. But I could already see it in his eyes. He was not interested in hearing from me. I was part of the old guard, a relic of the Stone Age he had come to save. Over the next week, the transition began. Evan set up a Slack channel for safety checks and assigned everyone to log inspection results directly into the app. No more signatures, no more physical verifications. I tried to follow the new protocol, but the flaws appeared almost immediately. Alerts piled up without responses. The app crashed twice in the same day. And more than once, I caught someone marking complete on a check they had not even done. I quietly fixed the mistakes when I could, but I also started documenting every single one. Pictures, timestamps, notes. Stored in a personal cloud folder I named Plan B. I told myself it was not revenge. It was insurance. Evan, meanwhile, seemed oblivious. He strutted around with his tablet, talking about efficiency metrics and scaling systems. He used phrases like digital transformation and operational synergy in casual conversation, as if we were all supposed to swoon at his vocabulary. What he did not understand, or maybe did not care to understand, was that you cannot scale trust. You build it, slowly, with consistency and proof. And that was something his shiny new system did not have. I kept my head down, my ears open, and my checklist, both the one in my memory and the one in my hidden folder. Close. I had a feeling the new energy would not last forever. And when it failed, I intended to be ready. It did not take long for Evan's future to start falling apart. At first, everyone humored him. The supervisors logged into the app during their shifts, clicked through the checklists, and posted the occasional photo of a gauge or a valve. But within 2 weeks, the cracks were wide enough for anyone to see. Alerts stacked up in the queue, unacknowledged for hours. Sometimes the same alert was cleared without anyone actually checking the equipment. And the Slack channel Evan had set up for urgent safety updates turned into a dumping ground for unrelated chatter. Memes, sports scores, even a photo of someone's cat wearing a hard hat. I tried to keep my mouth shut, but every fiber of my being screamed at the chaos unfolding. I knew exactly what was happening. The app was easy to ignore. There was no face-to-face accountability, no signature to tie a missed inspection back to a person. It became one more digital notification in a world drowning in them. And unlike my clipboard, which made people slow down and physically verify each task, the app let them mark things as done without lifting a finger. If someone wanted to skip a boiler pressure check, all they had to do was tap the green button. No one would know. At least, not right away. I started catching little mistakes almost daily. A coolant line was marked as normal, even though the gauge read dangerously high. A circuit breaker inspection was signed off digitally, but when I checked, the cover had not even been opened. Each time, I took photos, saved them to my cloud folder, and added detailed notes. Dates, times, names. My folder, Plan B, grew thicker by the day. It was not that I wanted Evan to fail, but I knew where this road ended. If his system caused a real incident, the fallout would land on everyone's shoulders, including mine. I was not about to let my spotless record get buried under his innovation. Evan, of course, acted like nothing was wrong. He paraded his tablet in meetings, showing charts and graphs pulled from the app's dashboard. "Look at the completion rates," he said one morning, beaming. I bit back the urge to ask him how many of those completions were real. He spoke in percentages, not in people. He loved the numbers the app gave him, but he never seemed interested in the reality behind them. The truth was, his data looked good because it was easy to fake. And that truth was going to come knocking sooner than he thought. By the 3rd week, I could feel the tension building on the floor. A few supervisors started quietly complaining to me about how clunky the app was. Some admitted they were behind on inspections because the Wi-Fi kept dropping out. Others just shrugged and said, "It is easier to click done than to fight with it." I listened, nodded, and made mental notes. My plan was simple: keep documenting, keep working, and keep my mouth shut. Until the right moment came. That moment, I suspected, would not be far off. In places like Norhollow Manufacturing, inefficiency always leaves a trail, and if you follow it long enough, it leads you straight to the moment everything stops working. And when that moment came, I intended to be standing there with proof in my hands. The first time I tried to raise a serious concern with Evan, I still thought reason might work. It was a Tuesday morning, and I had just finished a walkthrough of the West Bay. 3 different hydraulic presses had been marked clear in the app, but one was leaking fluid at the base, and another had a hairline crack in the pressure gauge. The third had a faint metallic grinding sound that anyone with experience would recognize as a warning sign. I took photos, wrote up a detailed note, and submitted it through both the app and an email to Evan. I even followed up in person later that afternoon. He did not look up from his tablet when I spoke. "Laura, you are stuck in the past," he said in that easy, patronizing tone that makes your teeth hurt. "The app works fine. If people use it correctly, we just need to improve adoption. You do not need to worry about chasing down every little thing." Every little thing. I could not believe it. The man was calling the potential failure of a machine that could crush a steel beam every little thing. I felt heat rise in my chest, but I swallowed it. Over the next month, I tried again. Twice. Once about skipped coolant checks, another time about circuit breakers left uninspected for 2 shifts. Each time, I was brushed off. Evan's responses became shorter, colder. "Stop micromanaging," he told me once. "Let the system work." And then came the real gut punch. A forwarded email from HR asking me to come in for a discussion about role alignment. Sitting across from a stiff-faced HR rep, I was told that my resistance to change was creating friction with the new operational model. I left the meeting with a polite smile and a hollow ache in my stomach. Evan stripped me from the daily inspection schedule the very next week. My new assignment: inventory audits. Counting pallets, tracking shrink wrap rolls, logging shipments in and out. It was work that had nothing to do with my expertise and everything to do with keeping me away from the floor. My replacement on inspections was a supervisor with barely 6 months in the company. When I congratulated him, he said, "Evan told me you were burned out." Figured you'd be relieved. Burned out? No. Shut out. Absolutely. It was clear what was happening. Evan wanted me out of the way. My record and my methods were a threat to his narrative, and as long as I kept pointing out cracks in his digital revolution, he would see me as an obstacle. The resentment in me hardened into something sharper. I decided if he wanted me quiet, I would give him quiet. But it would be the kind of quiet that comes before a storm. I would do the work they gave me, smile when spoken to, and keep every scrap of evidence locked away in my Plan B folder. I knew one thing for certain: I could survive being ignored. I had been underestimated before. But Evan? He had never survived a system failure in his life, and one was coming for him faster than he could imagine. It started small, the way trouble always does. One Monday morning, I overheard 2 forklift drivers arguing near the loading dock. A batch of aluminum panels had been delivered to the wrong bay, forcing them to scramble and move everything by hand to meet the shipping schedule. When I checked the records in Evan's app later, the delivery was marked on time and accurate. No one had corrected it. That was the first hairline fracture in his perfect digital facade. Within days, more followed. A shipment of resin pellets sat uncovered in the rain because no one logged the arrival time correctly, and the supervisor responsible thought someone else had already taken care of it. A set of unbalanced loads tipped dangerously while being moved between stations, denting the frames and delaying production for hours. Each time I spotted something, I documented it. Photos of misplaced shipments, videos of unlatched gates on moving platforms, screenshots of app records claiming inspections had been completed when I could prove they had not. My Plan B folder was becoming a gallery of mistakes, each one time-stamped and neatly labeled. The worst, at least up to that point, happened in the molding department. I had been sent there for an inventory check when I noticed the air felt thicker than usual, heat pressing in like a weight. A glance at the control panel told me why. The cooling system was running hotter than I had ever seen. I asked the operator if anyone had flagged it. He shrugged and said the app had been acting weird and the last few temperature logs had not gone through. No one had followed up. By the time maintenance got there, the line had to be shut down for 3 hours. Evan's reaction to these growing issues was almost impressive in its denial. At a weekly meeting, he waved off the delays and errors as adjustment pains and early adoption challenges. He reminded everyone that innovation requires patience and assured us that the system would stabilize. He even used the word teething, like we were supposed to accept growing pains in a plant where safety checks could mean the difference between a routine day and an ambulance ride. But I could see the change in the floor staff. They were getting nervous. Small mistakes were adding up, slowing production, and creating hazards. Conversations in the break room shifted from casual complaints to serious questions about whether the new system could handle the pace of Norhollow's operations. A few supervisors quietly came to me for advice on how we used to do things, and I walked them through my old checklist. They would nod and say, "That made more sense." But none of them dared challenge Evan outright. I did not either. Not yet. I knew better than to jump in too soon. My instinct told me the cracks were only going to widen, and eventually something big enough would break through. I wanted to be ready when it did. Not just with my own account of events, but with undeniable proof. And the way things were heading, I would not have to wait long for the proof to find me. It was a Thursday afternoon when I spotted it. The kind of detail you only notice after years of living and breathing the floor. I had been sent to check on pallet counts near the extrusion unit. Nothing to do with safety, nothing to do with my old duties. But as I walked past the main line, I caught a faint, irregular vibration beneath my feet. It was subtle, like the hum of a refrigerator that has started to stutter, but in a machine that large, it was a bad sign. I slowed, listening harder, and then I heard it. A dull, rhythmic knock from the motor housing. My stomach tightened. That knock meant the bearing assembly was going. If the bearing failed, the motor would overheat. If the motor overheated during a full production cycle, it could seize completely and take the entire line down with it. The repairs would cost tens of thousands, not to mention the downtime. I had seen it happen once, years ago, in another plant. That incident had kept us idle for 4 days. I was not about to let history repeat itself. I took a quick video of the noise, snapped close-ups of the housing, and went straight to my desk. I filed an urgent preventative stop request through the app, attached the video, and marked it high priority. Then I sent a separate email to Evan, explaining exactly what I suspected, the risks involved, and recommending an immediate inspection and shutdown for repairs. I knew the production schedule was tight, but the alternative was far worse. 5 minutes later, his response came through. "Laura, Sitip, we cannot delay the high-volume run for a hunch. We will monitor it. Stick to your assigned duties." My fingers tightened on the mouse until my knuckles hurt. A hunch. That was what he called 15 years of reading machines like most people read faces? I could feel the heat of anger in my chest, but I forced myself to take a breath. Losing my temper would get me nowhere. Instead, I quietly added his email to my Plan B folder, labeled it with the date and time, and kept working. But I also kept listening. Each time I walked past the extrusion unit, the knock seemed louder. By the end of the day, I could hear it even over the drone of the other machinery. I mentioned it to one of the maintenance techs I trusted. He frowned and said, "I'd pull that line now if it were up to me." It was not up to him. Or to me. That night, as I drove home, the noise replayed in my head like a ticking clock. I had done my part. Filed the report, raised the flag, documented the risk. If Evan wanted to gamble, he would own the loss. I just had a sinking feeling that when it came, it would not be a small one. Monday morning started like any other. At least on the surface. The air was heavy with the smell of oil and steel, the steady thrum of machinery echoing across the plant. But beneath it all, there was that sound again. Louder now. The irregular knock from the extrusion unit was no longer subtle. It was there in every step you took past the line, a hollow warning wrapped in metal. I glanced at the motor housing as I walked by and felt a sharp twist in my gut. It was running hot, too hot for the time of day. By 8:43 a.m., it happened. A sharp metallic crack rang out, followed by a grinding roar that made the hairs on my arms stand up. The motor seized, the conveyor belt stuttered to a halt, and the warning alarms erupted in a chorus of high-pitched wails. Workers froze, unsure if they should run, stay, or try to shut down other equipment. I knew exactly what to do. I grabbed the nearest emergency stop and slammed it down. The plant went still. The sudden silence was deafening. Evan came rushing in from the other side of the floor, tablet in hand, eyes wide. "What the hell happened?" he shouted, like I had orchestrated it just to prove him wrong. I did not answer right away. I just pointed to the motor, where a thin ribbon of smoke curled upward. "Bearing failure," I said flatly. "I filed the preventative stop request last Thursday." His mouth opened, but no words came out. Within minutes, the floor supervisor was on the phone with upper management. By 9 a.m., the entire West Bay was shut down, and production was at a standstill. The high-volume run Evan had insisted on pushing through was officially dead in the water. Repair crews were called in, but the earliest they could get the replacement parts was Wednesday. That meant 3 full days of lost output and missed shipments. The kind of loss that makes investors call and CEOs show up in person. And that was exactly what happened. At 11:15 a.m., Daniel Foster, our CEO, walked onto the factory floor. Daniel was not the kind of leader who visited plants without a reason. When he showed up, it meant something had gone very, very wrong. He listened to the briefing from the supervisors without interrupting, his expression calm but unreadable. Then, without a word, he turned and walked toward Evan's office. What happened next is burned into my memory. Daniel stepped inside, looked around for a moment, and then went straight to the corner where the trash can sat. He reached in and pulled out my laminated inspection sheet. Creased, coffee-stained, and still perfectly legible. He turned it over in his hands, as if he were holding an artifact from another era. Then he looked up, his eyes scanning the room until they landed on me. "Laura," he said, "can you walk me through this?" My heart was pounding, but my voice was steady. "Yes, sir. I can." Daniel stood there with my laminated sheet in his hand like it was a blueprint for the plant itself. The edges were bent, a coffee stain bled into the corner, and the plastic coating was scuffed from years of use. But it was intact. Still carrying every step, every check, every safeguard that had kept this floor incident-free for 15 years. He held it the way someone holds something they already know is important. Evan shifted in his chair, his tablet screen still glowing with the half-loaded dashboard from the app. "Sir, That's just the old paper system Laura used, he began, voice steady but with that faint tremor people get when they know the conversation is not going their way. It's outdated. We have been transitioning to... Daniel raised a hand, cutting him off without even looking at him. 18 years without a single safety incident, he said, eyes locked on me. And this is what you used the entire time? I nodded. Yes, sir. Every single shift. Every single day. He turned back to Evan, holding up the sheet. And you threw this away? Evan tried to recover, leaning into his usual jargon. It was redundant. The app provides real-time data, automates reporting, and... Daniel's voice sharpened, slicing through his sentence. The app just cost us 3 days of production, a full-line shutdown, and a motor replacement. Her sheet didn't. The room went silent. You could feel the words hanging there like weight in the air. Daniel looked back at me. I want you to finish your report on the bearing failure. Include everything you flagged before it happened. His tone shifted from sharp to deliberate. Make it thorough. I will read every word. Then, to Evan. My office. Now, they left the floor together, Daniel walking with that calm authority that makes people step out of his way without being asked. Evan trailing behind like a student who knows detention is coming. I stood there for a moment, my hands still at my sides, letting the quiet satisfaction sink in. I did not need to gloat. I did not need to smile. The fact that my sheet was no longer in the trash spoke louder than anything I could have said. That was the moment I knew Evan's future had already become his past, and that mine was about to take a very different turn. East, 2 days after the shutdown, I was called into Daniel Foster's office. It was early, the kind of early when the building still smells faintly of last night's cleaning solution, and you can hear the hum of the vending machines in the hallway. Daniel was behind his desk, the laminated sheet laid out in front of him like a contract. Beside it was a thick folder. The printed copy of my Plan B documentation. Photos, emails, timestamps, every single warning I had logged over the past 3 months. He had read it all. Laura, he said, tapping the folder, I do not like surprises, but I like being blind even less. This, he motioned to the evidence, is why you are still here. And this, he held up my sheet, is why I want you in charge of every operational safety process across all 3 plants. I felt my breath catch. You will report directly to me, he continued. No middle layers, no interference. I nodded, still processing, when his voice shifted, low and pointed. Evan will no longer have the authority to approve or reject safety requests. Effective immediately, he is being reassigned to shadow you during inspections until further notice. I almost laughed, but I kept my face neutral. Understood, I said. When word spread, the floor staff did not say much, but the glances said enough. Smiles that flickered just for a second, nods from people who had been quietly rooting for me. Evan avoided my eyes, his once confident stride replaced by a clipped, almost reluctant shuffle whenever he followed me on rounds. At first, he tried to make small talk. Just trying to learn the ropes, he muttered one morning as I checked a coolant valve. I let him talk, but I kept working. He was not here to learn the ropes. He was here because he had cut them and watched the system fall, and now he had to see firsthand how it was rebuilt. On the first week in my new role, I reinstated the laminated checklist. Not just for my plant, but as the official protocol for all 3 facilities. Each site received a copy customized to their equipment, but the structure remained the same. I also kept the app, not out of loyalty to Evan's idea, but because technology can be useful when it works alongside proven methods. Now, supervisors logged inspections on paper first, then uploaded the data. 2 systems, 2 layers of verification, no excuses. By the end of that month, incidents had dropped back to 0, and production ran smoother than it had in nearly a year. I filed my reports directly to Daniel every Friday, each one ending with the same note. All verified in accordance with the Mitchell method. He told me he liked that name. I told him it was not about my name. It was about making sure the people on the floor could trust the system that was supposed to protect them. Evan never apologized, not directly. But every time he stood beside me while I signed off on an inspection, the silence between us felt like an admission. And honestly, that was enough. 2 months later, Daniel called for a company-wide meeting. Not just our plant. Every site, every department, every shift. The auditorium was packed, the kind of packed where the air feels charged before anything is even said. I sat in the 3rd row, not entirely sure why I was there, but I had a feeling it was not for another policy rollout or production forecast. Daniel stood at the front with a covered display beside him, the cloth draped over it like a curtain hiding something important. He started by telling the story in his slow, deliberate way, the kind that makes people lean in without realizing it. He spoke about the shutdown, about the warning that had been ignored, and about the folder of documentation that left no room for excuses. Then he shifted to the part I did not expect. How for 15 years, one simple laminated checklist had kept a factory floor incident-free. He held up my original sheet, the creases and stains still visible, and for the first time in my career, the entire room applauded something I had done. "Quiet competence," Daniel said, his voice carrying through the room. "Beats loud ignorance every time." With that, he pulled the cloth away from the display, revealing a bronze plaque mounted on a wooden frame. Behind the glass was my laminated checklist, perfectly preserved. Above it, etched into the metal, were the words, "Proven in practice." The Mitchell method. I felt a warmth in my chest that was not pride exactly, but something heavier, deeper. Vindication, maybe. For years, I had been called old-fashioned, resistant, too meticulous. Now, the very thing they had mocked was immortalized in the company's history. The applause rose again, and this time I stood because Daniel motioned for me to join him at the front. I did not say much. Just a quiet thank you to the people who had trusted the system, even when others did not. From that day on, the plaque hung in the main lobby, right where every visitor, client, and employee could see it. New hires were told the story during orientation. Supervisors carried laminated checklists again, not because it was tradition, but because it worked. And every time I walked past that display, I remembered the day Evan tossed it in the trash. And the day Daniel pulled it back out. Evan still works here. He shadows me less now, mostly keeping to his new, narrower role. We do not talk much, and that is fine. I do not need an apology. The results speak louder than any words he could offer. My revenge was never about making him miserable. It was about proving, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that doing things right outlasts every trend, every shortcut, every ego-driven experiment. Sometimes revenge is not loud. Sometimes it is a glass case in the lobby with your name on it, quietly telling the world you were right all along. And that, to me, will always be enough.